You know what time it is?
What time?
It's molding time.
Molding time, molding time, molding time!
The first step in our journey to make duplicates of this mana vault is to make a whole bunch of mold boxes for each piece that we will need to make a copy of. Each one of the boxes has been labeled with what will be inside and along with how to put it back together. Pro tip, use beeswax to coat your mold boxes with, and that will prevent the silicone and resin from sticking to your boxes so you can use them over and over again. I like to coat them on the inside and the outside, and we use a heat gun to kind of thin it out and melt it all back down. So yeah, nothing sticks to wax but wax. Using a little heat plate in this little bucket that just has some melted wax inside it. And that should do ya. We have our mold boxes all covered with beeswax. And now we need to position each of our pieces inside that box so that we can work out the mold. And we're going to be using some clay to do something like this, and some of these keys that we have already made to make the first half of our mold. And the idea that we're doing here is we'll mount this piece on some clay, like so, put some keys around it, and we want the piece to sit at a little bit of an angle, as you can see this one is. That way, when it's sitting flat inside the mold, the liquid is going to roll up this way and through any of the high points, like right here. And the second half of the mold, we'll put the vent holes in. So yeah, let's do that. Just going to use two flat sticks that are a little bit different height. It doesn't have to be too much, just so there's a slight angle. We'll roll out a little square here in the middle. And this is just how we're doing, these panels. We have some one-piece molds that we've made. The main box is a little bit different, and each mold that you make is going to be a little bit different. They're not always going to be straightforward, and you got to use your best judgment, figure out what's going to hopefully work for the piece. And hopefully this is going to work out for this mold. Trim this excess off a little bit. We're going to use some turpenoid to soften up the clay. This is just some wax clay. This is plastilina clay, and the key here is also that it's sulfur-free. You do not want sulfur in your clay because the silicone will not harden next to it, it'll stay soft. And this won't air dry. It stays nice and pliable forever, which is handy. I just bought a big probably, 5 pounds of this, and we just keep using the same clay over and over again. We're using this turpenoid to make it so that it kind of softens up the clay a little bit, and will make this piece stick a little better. Fill in these holes because we don't want silicone to sneak up in there. When we do the second half, we're going to have to remove all of this clay. We'll go over that when we get there. And also don't want clay down inside this hole. We'll have to drill this hole out each time. I'd like to know where that center is, so we'll leave a little bit of a divot. I also want the high side to be up here. Try to push this so it's center. We want to come in and fill in the gaps that we have around the edges here. I'm going to go around the edges of the clay. Some of this turpenoid to help smooth it out and make a good grip to this lid piece. We don't want any clay on the piece itself, or that's going to be picked up in the mold. You can use this turpenoid to help clean that up too. All right, I think that's pretty good. Now, it's going to sit in the mold box like this, but we need one more thing, and that's keys. The keys do two things. One, it tells us how to put the second half back on, and it also helps keep the second half aligned. So when you're mashing them together, that they don't kind of twist on each other. I just made a little mold here of these little, I think they were stoppers, like a little rubber stoppers originally, and we made a mold of a whole bunch of them. That way we can cast up keys as we need. Use some super glue to glue these on. I'm going to put one in each corner, one of the big ones at least. One of these little ones in the middle. It helps on one side to maybe do a little bit of different pattern if your pieces, like this is pretty square, so it'll be hard for me to tell which way this needs to go back when I put the two mold halves together. So by putting keys on two sides like here, that key is going to tell me that I need to line those up when I put the mold halves together. So that'll do it for this one. Let me show you what I did for the rest of them. For the dials of the stand, we just needed to do a one-piece mold. There's the lid that we just finished up. Here's what we're doing for the base. It's got a much bigger box, and we have the keys right here for this one. The rest of the panels didn't need a key as much because the piece itself, you can see right here, it's going to be the key, so I know how it's going to go back together. But we pretty much did the same thing that we did for the lid panel for every one of the sides of the manifold. The next step for all these will be to put their mold boxes on them, and then we'll start filling with silicone and get those into the pressure pot. It's time to start pouring our molds. The boxes are all assembled back together. For the silicone, I will be using this stuff, this cast-a-mold tin cured silicone. You mix this with a little bit of this. It's a 1:10 ratio. I've already done that. Here we go. Normally you'd want to degas this in a vacuum chamber, but I'm going to be putting these in the pressure pot, so it's not quite as mandatory. Of course, so you can see. You want to try to just pour in the corner. High pour, so go really high. And let that stream just slowly kind of encase the piece. You don't want to drape over the piece because you might trap air. We're going to let that settle for just a little bit. While we do that, let's do these numbers. With something like the numbers, I want to be sure that we don't get air trapped inside. So we take an old brush and we just make sure we can get everything brushed into those numbers really well. any little bubbles trapped in there after the silicone is cured will make a little bubble that I'll have to scrape off of each piece. So we want to avoid doing that. I like to be about, I always say, a Lego thick. This looks like we've about got that. See, about like that thick. All right, these are good to go. We are going to take them and place them in the pressure pot. The first half of the molds are now complete. They sat in the pressure pots all night long. We will need to take the boxes apart and drop those molds a little bit so we can get to the other side and remove all that clay we put on. I will show you what that looks like on this one right here, and then we'll fill it back up with silicone and put it back in the pressure pot. The silicone is nice and pure after these have sat in the pressure pot all night. We are going to use a little tool here to try to pop this out. I think I'll just be able to lift this one out easy enough. Worked out great. This one, we are going to have to do the other side, so we'll take the back panel off. We want the piece to stay in the box. If we can make that happen, that would be great. When I say piece, I meant we want the piece inside the silicone to stay in the silicone itself. Hopefully we don't pop it out. It can happen. We'll figure it out if it does. Perfect. Now we try to take this clay off. If all goes well, we'll get this in one big chunk. Oh yeah, that's great, look at that. You'll love to see it. Clean out where the magnets are going to go. Make this little divot a little bit bigger. Trim up the flashing that we have. We don't want that on there. This just helps the mold sit flat whenever we're casting pieces. You can see it has kind of there's a lip there that it'll keep the mold raised up in those areas. So we want it to be sitting on this flat area. And it also makes the mold look nicer. Now we want to put this back in the box the way that it was originally. Looks like it would have sat like so. Next, we'll put a board on the bottom here, and we're gonna coat the inside with some Vaseline so we can do our second half of the mold, and I'll show you how to do that. And we'll have a quick look at what the rest of them look like at this stage. Here's the dial and the lid that we just pulled. And here's how the rest of the molds are looking right now. The dials and the bases are done. We won't need to make another half of the mold, but these other pieces here will all need a second half. These are all two-part molds. There's still some cleanup that we need to do to get them ready, and we'll do that and show you how we proceed to the next step. We've got our pieces all ready for the next step, and that is going to be putting a layer. I like to just use some petroleum jelly, Vaseline, and we'll also do a spray release. I'll show you that next. we want to paint all of this silicone with a really, really, really thin layer of this petroleum jelly. I try not to get it on the piece because if you streak the piece, it will show. The silicone will pick it up. And we're doing this so we have a barrier between the next side of the silicone that we're going to be pouring on. Use a smaller brush to get up on these corners and edges. There are some spray releases out there that you can just use the spray release. Just to be safe, I like to use this. All right, so the flow is going to go up this way and then out. So we need to put sprues on the ends here. It's going to use some super glue and these little wooden bits. I put one in each corner at the top up here. Like so. And like so. All right, next up is to fill this full of silicone, but before we do that, let's go have a look at the rest of them. The lid was probably the easiest for the vent holes, with the box being the next simplest to figure out. All of the panels, though, were a bit tricky. Where every little vent sprue is a spot that I thought might catch air based on how the panel was going to be sitting in the mold in the way that the air could flow out. But worst case scenario, we have more sprues than we need. And that's okay, those will pop off real easy and be easy to sand down. All right, there you have it. Let's start filling all these up with some silicone. The next bit's pretty straightforward. I do like to give it a good spray with this mold release just to be sure we've got everything covered. We do not want the silicone to stick to itself or it's going to lock that piece in. Same type of silicone, already pre-mixed. We're just going to pour it till it's about maybe half an inch high above this the ledge, and put it in the pressure pot, and it'll be good to go. Let it cure for the night, and we'll be able to cast this tomorrow. There we go. That should do it. The molds have set in the pressure pot all night long. Nice and firm, ready to come out. Let's see how we did. It should just pop right out. Oh yeah, look at that. That beeswax doing its job. And there's the line split where we coated everything with the mold release. Easy peasy. Oh yeah, that's nice. There's our lid. And now, we can make a copy of the lid. Let's have a look at the rest of them. With their molds all complete, we can now start making some copies. This is what each one of them is going to look like. The top half and the bottom half.
Tune in next week when hopefully we have the first casting done of the Mana Vault.
Thanks for watching.
No jokes. No jokes. No jokes.
Not even a little one?
No jokes. No jokes. Oh, how does my boobs sound though? What time is it?
I don't know. What time is it?
It's molded time. Molded time. Molded time.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. It's so accurate.
I know, I'm getting really good at it.
I'm saying all the words. So many words. That's like 7 inches right there. Get up. You really brought it.
It's because I got sunlight.
We should go
Like a
outside more.
flower.
Like a flower. You get fertilized.
Ugh.